Yes, hello, everybody. Who's that guest? Who's that guest? You hear male laughing in the background. Who could it possibly
Did.
be?
You did.
Philly's finest. This was an rather around the way curl favorite guest, and that really warmed my little heart because it was a very random meetup between us. It was just a Twitter interaction, and I
Truly,
said, "Who is this human? He must come on this podcast." And
we
so
were here.
everybody, uh, well, go ahead, announce yourself because I always do a bad job. I want people to know exactly how you identify who you are and how you want to be known in this world.
Oh, energy. I love that. No, no. Thanks for having me back. It's Marquise Devon. Never Mark. You already know what it is. Bow, bow, bow. Yep. The niggas and niggas only dude here on Twitter. Host of Keeping It a Bean Pod as well. Lover of culture, lover of coffee. Tonight I got some wine, so we out here.
I know and you did that was way better than what the hell I was gonna say. So I'm
We keep it
glad that I
simple.
did that. Um, And Marquise, you and I have been on Olay and Friends
Yep.
show. Like I'm seeing you pop up everywhere and I'm absolutely loving it.
The
Your
feeling's
voice needs to
mutual.
be amplified. I'm like, hell yeah, fucking
Let's
right.
go.
So thank you for joining me. Do you have anything you want to any updates, anything you want to plug, anything you want to say off the top of this episode?
Oh, anything coming up? Let's think.
The update portions. No
Yeah,
pressure.
not at all. Nah, honestly, I'm pretty chilling. Like I'm wrapping up the first full season of Keeping It a Bean. I was like, there's gonna be some more things coming up. So look out for some small
Ooh.
live events, live recordings. I'm gonna be partnering with a couple local coffee shops here in Philly. Keep bringing it all together, keeping it a bean, some coffee shops, all that
Eh,
good stuff.
cute.
So you'll see some live recordings. I'm excited for some of the guests coming up. Other than that, though, it's simple. I'm just gearing up for the summer program I got with a few of my students. So that's
Oh
really where
wow.
I'm at right now.
I was gonna ask you, were you off for the summer? Of course you're not. Of course you're
No,
working.
I miss the actual, like, I'm not a classroom teacher anymore, so I don't get my
Mm,
summers off. But my program, it's pretty light
I
during like the
see.
actual school year. But the summers when we do our 6 week intensive, getting students prepared for college bridge programs, so, college tours and all that stuff. But also like running a full summer camp essentially.
The
So
real work. The real work.
yeah, right. We're here.
Good job by you.
Appreciate it.
Announcements over here is that we listened. I sat up one night. I don't know what came over me. And I was so sick of getting DMs from folks like, where can we find you on YouTube? I only see hair stuff on YouTube. Do you guys actually have a podcast? What's going on? And I was like, you know what? Okay. There are hundreds of videos that need to be organized, need to be reclassified, and I don't love all of the videos. I don't love the quality of all of them just because we've gotten progressively better over time, but I am here to announce that videos from 2022 and 2023 are now available on YouTube under the Around the Way Girls YouTube channel. It will be linked in the description. You can watch. I don't know why YouTube does this, but they like upload them in some weird ass strange order. I have created playlists where if you click on playlists, you can watch them in order. And we're going to try this out because this is not just listen, we have Patreon going. We have patrons that pay, that support us to get these videos and to get our Patreon kickbacks and also get exclusive content um, and have like our little Patreon community, which is wonderful. So that will remain intact. What's going to happen is these videos, I am still figuring out if they're going to come out a month later, if they're going to come out more than a month later. I'm airing one a month. Everybody around me who I'm consulting with is like, just put it out a month later. That way, the patrons get what they need. They get the exclusive drop right away. And what's in store is that more content will come So usually Shanti and I will stay on after an episode, or we might even start recording additional content for Patreon, but that will not be available on YouTube or the audio version. So anyway, shout out to everybody joining us on YouTube. I think just as a creator, you have to learn YouTube. And you also have to recognize that if you put stuff out on YouTube, then you lose listens, you lose streams. So it's a very difficult thing to navigate because,
Oh, I was just having this conversation because I was
right?
so used to, like, I'm such like an audio first person, and so like that's where the base of my listeners are at. But like ever since the pandemic happened, so many people are no longer like commuting as
Mm-hmm.
much anymore, and so I've
And
just,
they watch.
yeah, so they're just watching now, and I was just like, oh, like podcast listenership is now viewership. And I had to
Mm-hmm.
like adjust because I said I don't like these numbers going down, like,
Yeah,
but I had to realize it's a balance.
it's a balance and it's very tricky. And YouTube requires a lot more views in order to get any really notoriety, to figure out that algorithm, let alone any money. We don't plan on making any kind of real money on YouTube,
Right.
but yeah, so anybody who's podcasting, anybody who's interested in podcasting, just understand that that's a delicate line to straddle, that you're just like, all right, you want to give the people what they want, but you also need to keep your numbers up because these damn listen, the way in which numbers are scrutinized right now, it's just
Mm-hmm.
crazy. The network that we are on is like, hey, we need this many impressions, period. We don't know what's going on. Like, let it drop. If you take one break, you take one reprise episode. Like, there's so many people, and I'm so appreciative of them that are DMing and saying, like, yo, Antoinette, you've held it down for this month. Great job. Take a break. And I'm like, I would love to do that. But we have advertisers that paid for ad space. And if
Mm-hmm.
I throw up a reprise episode, they don't get the impressions because people don't listen as much to those. So
Right.
the back end stuff is very interesting. It's interesting to learn. I'm nervous about this move, but if it affects the numbers, worst case, we've tried, and then we might have to take it on down. I don't know. So
Right.
for right now, it's there. Please go check it out. And once I consult with Shanti on 2024 videos and we come to an agreement on those, then those will roll out and be available as well. And we'll make that announcement. So shout out to YouTube, shout out to us being on YouTube again. And yeah, that's it. That's my update.
That's real. Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't realize. I was like, yeah, you know what? That makes sense. Like, being
Yeah.
part of a network versus like the independent stuff, because it's like you still have your contractual
And
obligations or whatnot.
that's the thing that's so interesting, is that we are still very much independent. It's like the
Right.
network gets us ads, but they don't
Yeah.
do anything else. Like, they're not pushing us, they're not
Oh.
promoting us. Yeah. So like if you wanted me to write an email or whatever and connect you, I could, because it's like they don't produce anything. They literally sell your show. They get you ads. They take a percentage off top because they have these connections, and they program the ads, and they
Huh.
monitor your stats, and
Yeah.
that's really what they do, honestly. I mean,
It's so
unless you're
fascinating.
a huge show, then they're going to do a little bit more because they make a ton of money off of you, you
That's
know?
yep. You can
So
understand your value very quickly.
yeah, very quickly. So, but with that said, shout out to the network. Shout out to Gumball. Anywho, whatever. Please rate, review, subscribe, and share Around the Way Curls. I saw, speaking of Olay, shout out to Olay. Olay O'Loren is actually going to be the guest on the next episode. I recorded with her last night, and we talked about prison reform. We talked about social justice. We talked, what
Mm-hmm.
else did we talk? Oh, God. And then we talked about Black excellence. And sis said, that's bullshit. She said, I don't want to hear about Black excellence no more. Don't say it. So get ready, because that force of nature is on the pod next week or next episode. And I'm very excited about that. But speaking of her, and speaking of rate review, I just want to share something that she tweeted and that she shared with me because I was all down and out over a couple of the last couple of reviews that I saw on
Hmm.
Apple that like crushed me. It was like, "Oh man, what are we doing?" She wrote, I encourage people to stop and say something positive to the content creators whose content you consume for free. Instead of looking for what you can critique, why don't you tell folk what you like about their work? I promise it's okay to give positive feedback or be quiet. And I'm like, wow. She helped me through this whole I mean, it's I even do it. I know that like
Hmm.
I'm quick and not to write an actual review, but I'm quick to like share my opinion when I have a critique or I don't like something. And I don't know if I'm as quick to share accolades or to express gratitude or say
Yeah.
great job. And I'm gonna be clear, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of listeners who pour into us who are very kind. Um I just know that, like, there's also some who go out of their way to tell us how shitty we are or whatever the case is. I mean, I saw one review and it really had me upset where they were like, Antoinette did not support Shanti at all while she announced her break. She was just quiet. I'm like, you know what? I'm quiet because it's not my place to say anything else about why Shanti needs a break. The way I'm supporting her is by talking to her, by showing up for this podcast, and by encouraging her.
Wow.
I'm the one that told her take the break. I'm the one that
Right.
said don't record. So seeing that, I'm just like, oh my God, I'm still not shit. Like this is crazy. So she
That is
helped
so interesting.
she helped me put it into perspective, but like I just want to offer that and it's not specific to us. I'm calling myself in as well to be like,
Hmm.
yo, check yourself. Like recognize that not everybody is always having a good day. Like even when I'm out at I mean, I used to be a server and
Hmm.
I never don't leave a tip. Even if I
Yeah.
don't have good service. And of course, people do what you want, but I recognize like I remember going into work after having my getting an IUD inserted, like
Yeah.
and being
Oh,
in
wow.
so much pain and
Yeah.
having to work and be on the floor. Like I remember going into work after a breakup and my ex was at the place performing. Like and I just had to like eat it and smile and it was difficult. And so you just never know what's going on. And so
It's
I just encourage all of us, including myself, to have a thought before we say something publicly or put something somewhere publicly where like other folks are going to read it, the person who's pouring themselves into the work is going to read it, and
hmm
it's personal for me because I care about this. But also
yeah.
maybe, you can always send me a DM, hold me accountable, but like, damn,
Like,
publicly, damn.
and I think that's the piece right there. It's funny, like you brought this up. I started one, shout out to Olay for like that advice. Like that, I think that is
Yeah.
so important because I don't think we practice kindness enough. And I feel like
Mm.
it's like super foreign to people. And so um I've been doing this top tier series on Instagram, just being like, what are like the top 5 things I just want to be like, I'm like, oh, I'm excited about. So I was like
Mm.
talking around podcast episodes, TV I'm watching, creators that I'm following, events that I go to. But it's like, everybody's just like, oh my God, like, can I get on your top tier list? How's this work? I was just
Mhm.
like, yo, it's just whatever I interact with that week. So I was releasing it like for the last couple of Thursdays. And it's just like, just push positivity
Yeah.
whenever you can. And so my boy was like, Marquise, you compliment people regularly. So why don't you just like talk around the things that you're interested in and the things that get you excited? And I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. That falls in line with some stuff. And so for me, I've just been trying to practice more giving people their praise and stuff like that. But also just like doing it publicly because I realize we tend to give a lot of compliments on the back end to people that we feel like we have deeper relationships with. But I think it's always important to just be like, especially for creators, I'm like, I'm gonna always give props of podcasts that I'm listening to
Mhm.
or music that I'm enjoying, local artists, local creatives, and stuff like that. I think it's sad that it's refreshing to people because I
Yeah.
think we live in a politic in a world of deconstruction so much that we don't even engage in like, let's actually be nice. Because
Yeah.
people's like, you're too nice. What's this thing? I'm uncomfortable with this. And I'm like, it's simple, y'all.
That's super dope. And I'm all
Mhm.
long-winded, and you put it together perfectly, practicing kindness. Like,
Yeah,
I need to write that down. Like, how can I every day practice a little bit of kindness? A
right.
smidge. And if
And you
we
think
all
about it.
did that, how much better would our lives be exponentially? You
Yeah,
know?
and I totally like because it's something I try to like model, especially like working with kids. Like you try to model this thing all the time, but then even with like my peers, I'm like, I shout out to therapy, shout out to my therapist, but she was just like, yeah, you don't talk nice to yourself sometimes, and
Mm,
so like, but you talk nice about everybody else, and so like how do you
mm,
practice that same thing every morning? And so I realized, I said, my job inherently is supposed to practice kindness, but like, how am I making it like a personal practice, an intentional practice in my personal and everyday? And so like, I try to talk kind of myself first thing in the morning, and then try to do at least one or two random acts of kindness throughout the day, whether that's saying good morning, how you living, or just like taking time to like intentionally listen. And so that's simple, very simple yet effective ways to like put a smile on somebody's face, especially in Philly. That's how they be clocking that I'm not really from Philly because I'm just like, "Good morning, how you doing?" They're just like, "You're not from here." I
Wait,
said,
what do
"What?"
you mean? Did I miss that? Where are you
Oh,
from?
I'm originally from Reading, PA.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
that's fine.
so we're
Don't
not.
worry about
Yeah,
it. No, you're not from
yeah.
Philly, but you live in there. You
Oh yeah,
in there now. No,
it'll be
that's
6 years.
yeah. That's a real, yeah, practicing kindness, making it a daily practice. And again, I'm calling myself in as well because the way that I learn this the most is by being on the receiving end of something else and being
Mhm.
and then reflecting, being like, "Oh, what ways did you contribute to that as well for someone else?" So, you know,
Well, if it's any consolation, like today, you, in my mind, you practice kindness when you put out episodes and stuff like this of your show. Like I, this episode with you and Fran this morning put a
aw,
whole, yeah, it put a whole smile on my face. I
that's
was like,
Fran though. Like Fran,
nah.
she is just that lady. There's something around her. There's like an aura that she
Hmm.
just has. And she's one of these people that is so kind and
Hmm.
so refreshing and everyone loves her for it. But sometimes people are hated on because of that. And I've never run into anyone who just tried to hate on Fran. It's like you cannot deny that this
Hmm.
woman is just a kind, good human. Like if you decide something else, then that's more of a reflection on you. You know?
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm like, most times that somebody doesn't like them, they're probably reflecting either a need that they are just not being given, or it's like they're projecting on like, no, you
Yeah.
can't be this kind. I've never experienced this before. And so I'm like, a lot of it is just like a lot of unmet needs that we project onto other people who are we perceive as too kind or perceive as phony. But I'm like,
Mhm.
we just don't live in a space where enough of us, going back to it, like are practicing kindness to ourselves or to other people. Because
Yeah.
everybody's hurt, but effie, we all got pain, so we out here.
Listen. Uh,
Look,
well, with that said, practicing kindness. Thank you. Shout out to the new patrons who are supporting Around the Way Curls on Patreon. Michelle, Monet, Shaquilla, Noelle, Jean, or Jean. I'm not sure. Uh Bri Briante, right? Did I say
I'm
that?
gonna go with
I'm
Briante.
gonna go with Briante too. That's cute. And
Hmm.
Kyla. Shout out to y'all. Thank you so much for your support. It goes a long way. It pays for Monty. It pays for this new microphone. It pays for the thing. So shout out to y'all. And as soon as we can, we will have another Patreon kickback when Shanti is off her break. In other news, hot shit. You and I added this on last minute, and you like this artist as well. I may have said something about her on here. I'm not sure. I know I shouted her out on See the Thing Is. RIP to that wonderful space. But shout out to Shea Universe. Sis can sing. She
Dog.
could sing, 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 sing. I so enjoy her project. And I was listening to it today. She has a new song out as well. Have you heard her new song?
Nah, is that when Stay?
Stay. It
Yeah.
is so good. It is so
Okay, I'm gonna listen
y'all need to
after.
check Shea Universe Love's Letter. That is the project. It's beautiful. What are your thoughts on it?
It is so timely. Because for me, what is it? It's what it's been 9 or 10 months now since I've been like broken up with, and so I was just like,
Oh, I'm
oh,
sorry.
niggas, we all right
Okay.
now. But it has been like one of those albums that one reminds you, for me, it reminded me like, one, I'm not alone in this process of like exploring love and like what does it mean to love again, all of that stuff. But it's also like, I love the project because it goes through like so many ups and downs of like, what is love? What does it mean to lose love? But also like all the complicated natures of it too. And so like for me, as soon as I heard Love Self, I said, oh, this is an opener. This is an
Yeah.
opener. Like immediately
It's
drew me in.
it's so good. I wonder we were getting flagged. We used to have music at the end of every episode, and I used to incorporate music in this show, and we were getting flagged left and right. Like your shit's about to be taken down. I wish I
Mm-mm.
could insert. I don't know how See the Thing Is got away with it. They must have had a connection with the record labels or somebody because
I-
I don't know how we got flagged and they didn't. I
It'd be
wish I
everything
could
with
play
even like the
some.
friend zone. I'd be like, friend zone, you getting so many songs
Listen,
on here.
I'm about to I'm adding a clip. I'm gonna take the risk. Let me write the note on here. Add a clip. Add clip of music here. I'm gonna take the risk. Let's see. But y'all check that out. Also spelled her name wrong on a damn outline. Zaya Wade. So Zaya has announced a new website, a new safe space for teens, and I'm going to play the clip on Instagram so everybody can hear it. Another clip to insert. Oh no. I'm Dwayne Wade.
And I'm Zaya Wade, and yeah, welcome to Translatable. Translatable aims to serve as a community safe space for youth to express themselves through a number of creative outlets. Here at Translatable, we focus on communities of color, center the most marginalized, and emphasize the importance of parents and family. Translatable is also a resource hub for parents, families, and support system of the LGBTQIA plus youth. For our family, we were blessed to have a community of supporters and knowledgeable experts who could swiftly arm us with the tools we needed to support Zaya in her journey. We recognize the lack of digestible and relatable information available to youth and families, especially communities of color. And to this day, we are still learning. I'm so very proud of the daughter that I've had the opportunity to raise. She has been my biggest educator and inspiration of what it means to be true to you. That's why it's so important to create a collaborative space for the community to participate in the conversation and express themselves freely. Now, let's have some fun. Over the next few months, we'll be rolling out content, resource guides, and interactive features where we can hear from you. We want to emphasize that the learning never stops. You can expect to see ever evolving content and resources to keep you up to date on Translatable. So make sure to sign up for email updates. We're just getting started.
How dope is that?
That
Like
makes my heart so warm.
a
Like,
need and they feel it. Zaya is a force. Zaya is no joke. And I don't know if y'all heard the way sis was delivering this message, but
mm-hmm.
she is confident. And it's so important, like resources for parents, resources for family. I love it. I love it. I can't.
Dog, nah. That's like one of the best things. Like that's a resource that literally everybody can use. It is so dope because that incorporates parents who just don't know.
Mhm.
Parents who are just like, I don't know the world you're about to grow up in. Some who mean well, who may unintentionally cause harm. But like just having a networking community of people to come around and like learn how to love on their child, on their queer child, their trans child, like that. Nah, that's the work right there. Because we always say, like, once you help, and I know there's more intersection, but the Black trans woman, you inherently help the rest of the community. And so, like, even when you lean with who is the most marginalized within the intersections, this helps you just simply become more mindful of how to do it, but you normalize it in a way that's safe for the next generation coming up.
Yeah.
That's dope. That's dope.
Super dope. So shout out to Zaya. Shout out to Dwayne Wade. I mean, very good work by him. Lots of learning, lots of unlearning. And that young woman is so generous that it's mind-boggling to me. And finally, other hot shit is that we went to go see Home, the Broadway play, as a community. Shout out to the Around the Way Curls community. I want to shout out Jessica, Leah, Ombre, Anthony, or Tony. I keep calling you Anthony. I'm sorry. Savannah, Carl, Victoria, Jolie, Shanti's daughter, and Shanti. We all went, saw it as a family, saw it as a community. Beautiful show. I will say, the show is a little bit confusing for young people if they don't think abstractly, because there's 3 characters in the whole show playing. One character is the same character throughout the entire show, and the other 2 women are doing the labor, honey. They are playing every single other role. It's very minimalist. They're putting on a hat, a scarf, and just embodying like these new characters to tell the story of this man who starts off as a younger man, goes through a whole journey from down south to New York, homeless, struggle. Like it takes you on a journey. I don't want to give it away. And how he finds his way back home, literally and figuratively. And so really well done. All Black cast. And so it should be supported. So please, y'all, please check out Home. I actually have a discount ticket link that I will add in the description. I just remembered. And that reminds me to please, y'all, if you're not already following them, follow the Culture LP. I'll also link them in the description. Those are the kind folks who actually made this possible for us to go, got us the tickets, and are doing the work in connecting Black and brown people to shows that would serve us, that we identify with, that are for us. And it's just really important work and really dope work. And there's a need, so they filled it. And so shout out to the Culture LP, shout out to Home on Broadway, and shout out to all the folks that came. And I hope to do more soon. So that's hot shit this week.
I love it. I'm gonna go watch the show. I'm a theater kid, so I was like, oh, this is perfect.
Really? Tell me.
That's what.
You better not be coming up here and not saying nothing to nobody either. I swear to God. You be coming up to Brooklyn and New York and not saying nothing?
I have not been there since March, so this is my longest I've been away.
March? Ain't get a call, ain't get a text, ain't get a nothing.
I'm gonna let you know. I'll be there.
Be honest.
No, not
your
creeping.
voice went up. I don't believe it, child.
Now I do have a date in New York in 2 weeks, but I'll be up there 2 weekends in a row in June.
Say less. New York is the place to be for the summer now. It's
really my favorite place. I spend all my Sundays in Brooklyn if I could. Like, they already know how I am.
Well, then me, you, and Olay, we need to get some brunch or something. I'm actually not a brunch girl. I don't even know why I said that. Lunch.
It's okay. I'm a lunch kind of person.
Okay.
Dinner.
I'm
solid
girl.
with all of that.
Okay.
But shoot. But you sold me on this Broadway show, by the way. I said I didn't know about it. Yeah. So
you gotta check it out.
It's what I got my degree and I might as well use it.
I'm a theater baby. I have a degree in theater.
Wait, shut up.
Yes. I have a degree in theater and then a minor in musical theater. I am a theater kid. I performed before I got sucked into corporate because I couldn't take the lifestyle. And
oh my God. I performed for like 8 years straight. Like,
you're kidding.
I was dancing, theater, dramaturg. Yeah.
Dramaturg. Oh, you were one of the dorks. You were one of those. You were a theater kid.
Oh, because it was I'm either doing the dance captain stuff for musical theater or I'm doing like the dramaturgy stuff.
Oh, you were in the books doing all the research. I love it. All right, we have a lot to talk about this.
Yes, we do.
Because, honey. All right, let's take a break. I'll do my best, Shanti. After these messages. Oh, you do it. You do it, please.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
That is so good. I love it. I love it. Oh God. Gaza. There's not much to update. It's horrible. I don't know what else to
Still,
say. What do I say? Yeah, I don't think I do you what the yeah, all right.
I,
I've said it. It's just the same shit. All right, I can do it.
yeah.
Ready? And we are back. So, Gaza update during our 2-second break. I mean, there's not much of an update on my end here. It's the same thing. There's horrible famine. Nothing has changed with Netanyahu's approach on this war, on this genocide. Joe Biden is still riding with his man Netanyahu. And
no sense.
yeah, I mean, we talked about how there is an arrest warrant, or they're trying to have an arrest warrant out for Netanyahu and a bunch of his cronies, along with folks in Hamas. And it's very interesting to see how different politicians over here in the US are responding to that. I wasn't surprised. Maybe I was a little bit, because Bernie Sanders really disappointed me in the beginning of all this, because he didn't call for an immediate ceasefire. He kind of skirted that line and didn't want to come out. And now I think with all of the pressure that his constituents have put on him, he's very loud and proud against how the Israeli government is approaching this, and he's calling it a genocide. He's saying Netanyahu is guilty of war crimes. And while also very much holding Hamas accountable, I don't want to lose sight of that. But there's not much more to discuss. It's just more of the same, and it's awful. Go ahead.
No, it's just like, to me, it's like wild, because it's also, who was it, the ICC had put out like, hey, we need to investigate Israel and all of this stuff, and so many more. It's interesting seeing so many more countries start to say, like, we need to denounce what Israel is doing. We all need to like show support. And so I'm even more interested to see how other countries are going to be responding to it, because I'm like, we're in like a moral crisis right now at this point. And like, I know it's taken a lot longer for some of these countries to be able to just call out and speak out against it. But I'm so interested to see like why, or what shifted for them in terms of like, there's a collective, more people, more countries are trying to say like, nah, we need to do something about what Israel did at this point in time.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, lock them all up at this point.
Listen. And they won't. This will be in the courts for forever, and a day. But it's interesting I just Googled this while you were saying that, because Spain, Ireland, and Norway said on Wednesday that they would now recognize Palestine as a state. And this is a step toward, a long-held Palestinian aspiration. But like, I am still not very clear on what that means. Acknowledging, recognizing Palestine as a state while Israel controls the land, air, and sea. I don't know if that's what that really does. And I'll be honest, I haven't had enough time to really do my research on that. So I'm going to, because there's more than 140 countries that have already recognized Palestine as a state. That's 2/3 of the United Nations membership. And so with that said, what does that actually mean? Because Palestine is still in the situation that it is in. It is still being gutted because we are complicit in Israel's genocide. And not just complicit, we're actively involved and aiding it. Right. So I need to do more research on that. I keep saying this. I am really boggled down right now, but Sudan, Congo, I have to get on that as well. I know there's a lot of people who are asking Congo's a little easier to understand. Sudan a little harder for me. There's just so many
And it's
conflicts.
real. Yeah. And I think like even if like what I learned is I won't be an expert in every single thing. I know that is a bad
Yeah.
thing that's happening. But for me, I think the best thing to utilize my platform is just to be able to give space to those who are much more knowledgeable, right?
Yeah.
Like I was like, I know what my lane is. I know what is happening is absolutely wrong. I'm doing my best to keep myself educated, but it's like there are so many things happening, so much history, but we know at the root of it is like people are dying,
Yeah.
right? And so I think even as we continue to be knowledgeable, just curate a space where you can just amplify somebody who already knows the ins and outs of it too, while we are also becoming knowledgeable.
No, that's it. You're right. I mean, with that said, please, if someone
Hmm.
has more information on that, or is working in a field where that's up their alley, they understand those conflicts more, and they are feeling generous enough to come on here and educate us, that would be really great. I also know that Claire, there's a patron. Um, there's a patron that is doing really important work, and we were discussing it on Patreon. It's not doesn't have anything to do with these conflicts, but she's doing important work in Minneapolis, and I want to make sure that she knows that I have not forgotten that I want her to come on the podcast as well. So I will schedule that, figure out that timing.
Hmm.
Um, Speaking of listeners, and I think this was an email. I don't think it was a Patreon comment. I'm going to read an email that we got from a listener, and I'm happy that we got this email, and a calling in of sorts, but
Okay.
necessary. So she wrote, "Hello, beautiful queens. First and foremost, love y'all and your content, but in capital letters. Why are multiple Black and Brown podcasts not giving clout to Dr. Cornel West and promoting his running for president? I'm so tired of hearing a false narrative that Joe and Trump are our only options. I don't know your personal view on Cornel West, but don't you think it's worth a try to reach your audience? Don't you think it's worth a try to reach your audiences in a way to bring them more hope than despair? That there is another option. I think it would be awesome to bring him up and revive the community and inform them that they can vote for someone who is a little closer to home and community. He is running and is an option. Love y'all and big blessings to heart, mind, and spirit. Mwah. Um, Thank you
Hmm.
for that. You're right. We have not done enough work uh in informing folks about Dr. Cornel West. I will be honest. I personally, how do I say this? I personally in the past felt conflicted about it. And I felt conflicted about it because it is a third party vote,
Hmm.
and third party votes scare me.
Yep.
Because the narrative in the media is that a vote for a third party is a vote for Trump, basically. And the way that they calculate that is that most folks who would look to Dr. Cornel West, who is truly progressive, not just
Hmm.
saying it, but like truly for real fucking progressive, and we're going to get
Right.
into that. Um those are the folks that would make up part of the voter demographic that would possibly vote for Biden. And
Right.
so if they don't vote for Biden, Biden's margins go down and Trump's base remains intact, because nobody who wants to vote for Dr. Cornel West was actually voting for Donald Trump, right?
Right.
They are two polar opposites. Like Dr. Cornel West's base is not a MAGA base. It's a Joe
Not
Biden
even
bait.
close.
Not even close. And so with Joe Biden, who is already trailing Trump in 6 of the swing states, the most important states, swing states meaning it could go, they tend to go either way, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, all these things, that brings up a lot of fear, right? And so
Right.
I've dealt with this internal thing about
Mm-hmm.
how to be responsible with the platform, right? You see a Charlemagne getting a lot of criticism for coming out and being like, I'm not endorsing anybody. F all of them suck. And
Yeah.
now he's starting to clear. He just went on The View and clarified, like, listen, I'm not saying his name, but I just said I'm not voting for Trump. He is a threat to democracy itself.
Right.
And I'm not voting. So then who the fuck do you think I'm voting for, y'all? Put it together. And they're like, well, why don't you just say that? And he's like, because I think he's trash too, and I don't want my name connected with them. I get that.
Yeah.
You talked about people who are more qualified, right, to talk about this kind of stuff. I looked up a conversation with Mark Lamont Hill.
Yep.
And shout out to Philly, and Melina Abdullah, who is Dr. Cornel West's VP running mate. And Melina Abdullah is someone who she wasn't a founding member of Black Lives Matter, but she was one of the people who were at the first meetings to help put the organization together and get it off the ground. She's a powerhouse out in California. I want to prepare the audience. This clip is from an interview from her that was maybe an hour long. I've taken pieces from that clip from Mark Lamont Hill's Night School, his YouTube channel. That's amazing. Everybody should check that out.
So good.
It's so good. And so I've put together about 4 minutes of them kind of having this conversation, and you can respond to it. All right, when it's done.
As far as I know, I remember in 2008 when President Obama was running for president at the time as Senator Obama. There was a Green Party ticket. Been a lifelong member of the Green Party, and I voted for Cynthia McKinney and Rosa Clemente. And at that time, there were people who said, you can't do this. There's too much at stake. If you vote for the Green Party, we may end up with John McCain as president and the world is going to blow up. What do you say to people right now who say that whatever we were worried about back then, we should be doubly worried about now? If you were worried about McCain and you were worried about Romney and you were worried about even Bush, you need to be scared to death of Donald J. Trump. Yeah, we should be scared of Donald Trump. We should be alarmed. So I don't believe in fear. So we should be alarmed. We should recognize Donald Trump as the devil that he is. We should absolutely recognize Donald Trump as the devil that he is. But just because someone is not the devil incarnate, as is Donald Trump, doesn't mean that they're working for good. And I think if the Democrats want our vote, they got to earn it. And genocide does not earn my vote. The abandonment of poor people doesn't earn my vote. Kind of selling out to corporate interests doesn't earn my vote. And so if the Democrats want our vote, they got to earn our vote, and they haven't earned it. In fact, they betray us constantly and then dare us not to vote for them by saying things like a vote for a third party is a vote for the devil, right? And I don't believe that's the case. I know that's not the case. I know that. Let me push on that a little bit. It's a question that we do have to wrestle with. It again. I voted Jill Stein in 2020, and I voted Jill Stein in 2016. Jill Stein didn't win. You'd be shocked to know Hillary Clinton didn't. I voted for Jill Stein too. Yeah. And Donald Trump won. And there isn't a day that goes by that somebody doesn't tell me, particularly since I came out of Pennsylvania, that had I made different choices, that had other people in my state of Pennsylvania made different choices, Hillary Clinton would be president, and the world would be better than if Donald Trump would be president. We wouldn't have the Supreme Court makeup that we have right now. We wouldn't have lost affirmative action potentially. We wouldn't have lost Roe v. Wade. What do you say to people who accept the philosophical argument that we need to make different options and that no one's beholden to, that we're not beholden to anybody politically, that we should be able to vote whoever we want and the Democrats have to earn our vote? They say, yeah, that's good in theory, but in practice, if too many people don't vote for Joe Biden, Donald Trump wins. Simple math. And if that happens, then the world will be worse for the most vulnerable people among us.
I understand that fear, but I think I said I don't believe in fear, right? And fear is not going to get me to do something I don't want to do. I'm going to also say that I live in California, so if you look at the data, there's no data to support the idea that third-party candidates steal votes from other candidates, right? There is data to support the idea that we spur folks to vote who might not ordinarily vote. And I want to be clear, I know this because my PhD is actually in political science, right? So I do study this data, right? So most of the folks who will be voting for Dr. West and now me, right, are encouraged because they want a message that says we live in a world of abundance. People can have all of what they need and most of what they want if we make the decision to make it so.
So, and this is the last thing I'll ask you on this because I want to hear more about your platform. If you knew, and I asked Cornel the same question, if you knew going into October that the election was razor thin, I'm talking about Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, if they were all within the margin of error, and the data suggested that you all could be difference makers, would it change your decision to stay in the race?
So this is my first day as a vice president. We haven't had that conversation yet.
What are your thoughts?
Oh, so many thoughts. They're interesting talking points because I'm like, yeah, I think in theory, I love it, right? Because I'm like, I believe that there should be another option. I don't care for, I'll share the sentiments of Charlamagne. I don't care for either candidate, right? But something I think about a lot more intentionally is as she's talking around like the fear that we have. I said, yeah, fear as an individual, that's one thing. But I think as a collective, there are real world ramifications that we do need to genuinely consider in terms of like who's going to be the most impacted by the decision of there is a potential if we are taking a decent amount of votes away from Joe Biden, right? That objectively increases the chances of Trump becoming president again, which I don't think is going to be in anybody's best option, considering the genocide happening right now, considering the extreme amount of rollbacks. And so I do think I would support Cornel West a lot more if we were talking about it on a much more local level. If we can start locally and getting a lot more, because that's really where the push is at. I'm looking at some of the candidates here in Philly.
It's great.
They are going to be looking at it from a local level because I'm like, okay, you like the idea of abolition. You are into the idea of pushing more progressive policy, but the progressive policy is where it's going to hit us on a smaller level. And so we need to be much more cognizant of where does an abolitionist politic potentially have the most amount of impact? Where does a progressive policy have more possibility for impact that's actually on a local scale? So I would love to see more abolitionist, more progressive politicians actually put their foot into it, because for me, from a strategy standpoint, it actually makes more sense because these younger people are willing to vote for a progressive candidate. They're willing to put in the time for it because these are people that align with their base values, right? At the end of the day, if I'm going to take it a step further, if Cornel West were to were to be elected into presidency, the reality is that he would still be pressured to essentially become a war criminal at some point in time.
Right. He would have
right?
so many problems getting done what he wants to get done. Yeah.
because there's so many more barriers of entry, and
Yeah.
he would be so much more radical, which would make people on the other side push against him more and more. Right? For me, in my mind, I'm thinking about it from a standpoint of like, yeah, Joe Biden's going to get my vote, but on a local level, I have already did my due diligence of ensuring that I'm getting the people that I'm more interested in, who align a lot more with my politics, either up as a representative or into the mayor's office and stuff like that, right? I think that's the piece that's important. So I think if we were to move in a third party on a more strategic level, because right now, as much as I would love to like turn the system on its head and blow everything up and start anew, there's a lot of impact, unintended consequences that come with that, right? And so something that I've been thinking about a little bit more intentionally is we need a proof of concept before we are able to then scale somebody up to a presidential space. And so let's, instead of having bad faith actors at the top saying, well, yeah, we're gonna defund the police and yeah, we're gonna do this thing. Y'all not gonna, no, it's not gonna happen. And so if I'm thinking about it, if we can get the proof of concept of like, yeah, let's actually figure out what is defunding the police on a local level look like? What do progressive politics impact on a local level? We see this thing actually benefiting a community. And then as we are changing the culture of like, here's where the real stuff is happening because this old stuff isn't working. Now, many more people. So in my mind, within the next 4 years, we should be identifying candidates and identifying local policies that are actually working, that we can then say like, hey, this has worked here. How do we get this on a national scale? How do we get this on like the United States as a whole to do this, rather than the different little pockets of like, here's a progressive mayor here, here's a progressive mayor here. That's the piece for me that I think, if I were to look at somebody like a Cornel West, I would love to see more intellectuals be able to enter the space and work their way up in that traditional sense, versus trying to go to like the highest point in time, because I think there's a moral conundrum that they face. But I think as a whole, we need to get more people on board. As much as we see like the younger the younger generation have a progressive politic and shift more into much more radical politic, it still isn't proof of concept for people who are older millennials, who are Gen X, who are boomers, who are just like, I don't know about that. And so I do think we need to see a cultural shift and an ideological shift and proof of concept in order to then get a candidate who can genuinely be progressive, because then everybody has bought into it. The culture has followed, the culture has said it. Now the politics will follow. And I always believe culture changes before policy ever does. So that's how I would go about it.
See why I love him? You know, I love that proof of concept. I thought it was so, thank you for that. I thought it was so interesting too, that she said when Mark, pushed back, even though he voted, third party.
Yeah, because that's my biggest critique. I'm like, Jill Stein, bro.
Yeah, like, which, okay, cool, fine. But he pushed back for the sake of being a good interviewer, right? Shout out to him. Or maybe having changed feelings after he was called in or called out or received whatever criticism that he may agree with or not. I think it's interesting that they both laughed when he said, because he said, he was in Pennsylvania. So many more people were like, bro, your voice is so powerful. That is a swing state. That's basically, Pennsylvania is what got Biden over the top the last election. I mean, shout out to Philly and shout out to Pittsburgh. I mean, and of course Atlanta and Georgia heard you.
Right.
I thought it was so telling that she said, oh, well, that's not something, basically I don't have to worry about that because I'm in California. So what you're saying, you're kind of negating your argument, because what you're saying is, because I'm in California, I can rely on all of the other people that will vote for Biden to then take my vote and vote my true heart.
So you maintain your individual conscience without having to consider everybody else, because you already know. It's the same argument that everybody's dragging Cardi B for, right? Cardi B's just like, I'm in New York. I don't have to vote because we know where New York's going to vote, right? And so I was just like, yeah, it's the same side of the coin. Like, what are we talking about?
And
you have the safety of a blue state.
Right. I want to make sure the listeners understand what we're saying. If you are in a state that is not a swing state, that votes, that usually you don't have to think about how that state is going to vote in the presidential election, right? And when I say not a swing state, I'm talking about the presidential election, because it is not lost on me or on you, I'm sure, that there are so many other elections happening in November that are local elections that we must pay attention to, that I've reached out to a bunch of people to try to come on the podcast to talk about local elections more. But I don't want to digress. But when you have a state that is quote unquote a blue state, I mean, basically every year it goes blue, 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 blue. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, well, I don't have to go vote because it's mad people that are active, and this is a hella progressive ass state and whatever. To be very clear, New York is not a progressive state. New York City is progressive, and that's what keeps New York State progressive, blue, right? And keeps it blue. California is probably even more progressive than New York the state. Okay. But so she's leaning on these people who she knows will vote blue. And so I want to make sure the audience understands that. So in my opinion, that negates her argument. Is it okay? So you're saying that you're basically saying in swing states, it is important for you to be a little more strategic than that. And I think furthermore, another aspect of this argument, what we really should be focused on is why there are only two parties in many people's opinion. And it's because of the corporate dollars. It's because of capitalism. Dr. Cornel West is someone who I would love to see as president. And I'm going to link in this description his website, his platform for his presidency. It's everything that we could want, in my opinion. I mean, economic, and every single pillar is ends in justice. Economic justice, what does that look like? Abolishing poverty, abolishing homelessness, fair wage, national $27 minimum wage, end all tax loopholes for oligarchies, wealth tax on billionaires. It goes on, and end of use of credit scores for any decisions associated with finance, housing, or employment.
Child, because that was cooking me.
Listen. Then he has worker justice. Establish a workers' bill of rights that includes the end of right to work states. I mean, 33% minimum worker representation on all board of directors. National free pre-K childcare. Environmental justice. I mean, he says moving beyond the Green New Deal to a global green reconstruction initiative. Nationalize the fossil fuel industry, acknowledge and declare an immediate climate emergency. I mean, he's going in. Wealth justice. Go beyond Medicare for all towards true health justice, codify abortion rights, remove transgender exclusions, end medical apartheid. I love his word. End medical apartheid and protect / increase rights for people with disabilities, end the war on drugs. Racial justice, reparations to address the unpaid debt to Black U.S. residents. Black is capitalized, by the way. Address the disproportionate mortality rate for Black pregnancies. Require public review commissions for every police force in the nation. Transformative justice, protect free speech, endorse whistleblower protections, end mass incarceration, redistribute police funding to unarmed community-led forces. We're going to get into that the next episode with Olay. Voter justice, education justice, LGBTQIA justice, gun violence justice, immigration justice, global justice. Dismantle the U.S. empire is the first bullet on global justice.
He's an anti-imperialist. Like, get in
Yes.
everything.
End Israeli apartheid of the Palestinian people. Press the UN to establish a program for Palestinian dignity and liberation. Cease all military support to nations committing war crimes. I mean, no intervention, military or otherwise. Oh, interesting. Or otherwise in Haiti. Like, there's so much here
Yep.
that is so, and I don't want to be on my, I don't want to be on my soapbox, but there's so much here. There's
Yeah.
so much here that I am so aligned with. And this is why it is so fucking frustrating, where I want to bang my fucking fist on a table, that I still don't feel like it's strategic for me to use my vote for him. And maybe it is. I'm in New York. Maybe this is where I should do it. Maybe we should be strategic, right? And where we're not in swing states, maybe if we were organized enough, we vote for Dr. Cornel West so that people can see there's a need for this type of thinking. And I think I've had a long I've been listening to so many fucking interviews with him. I've been doing so much research, and I'm just like, how can we get organized so we can show, like, the way that they got organized in, what was that? What's in Michigan? How they were like, we're voting undecided to show Joe Biden, we are not fucking with you and your foreign affairs. And for people who don't remember that was when 100,000 people voted undecided in the primaries to show Joe Biden, you better get it the fuck together. You don't just have our vote. That's strategic. That sends a message. So how can we collectively organize and send a message? If I was in Philadelphia in a swing state, there's no way in hell I would even consider this. And that makes me so angry.
Because it's
the electoral college bullshit. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Every single time. No, it's valid though, right? Like, we don't have the privilege to be able to be progressive, as progressive as we want with our vote. Black folks across the nation, right, are still voting in interest of community, not voting in self-interest. And we can get these statistics in terms of 86% plus Black men are voting democratically, 93% plus Black women are voting democratically. Like, we are quite literally saving the nation, right? But again, I think that also works in some of our best interests, right? Against our individual best interests. So our vote's not even our vote. Our vote is for the next generation to survive. And so I think pragmatism in this moment is what is keeping us afloat for as long as possible, as much as we want to be able to vote much more progressively, as much as we want to take a chance on a Cornel West. And that's why, for me personally, I was like, yeah, in order to convince, and it's so funny, like talking to some old heads, I go every other Thursday to the Philly prison up in Northeast Philly to talk to some of the, on State Road. And so we talked to some of the youth up there who are currently just waiting for it to be sentenced and all this other stuff. And talking to some of the older Black men there, they were like, yeah, I don't even want to vote at this point. Some admitted to voting for Trump before. Some were just like, I don't want to vote at all. And I was like, honestly, what I learned is it's not even being inspired to vote for either one of the candidates. It's actually being inspired to vote beyond the candidate, right? And so for me, I was like, think about the Supreme Court. What does that mean, right? Because in this next year, there's potential for the next president to enact 3 new Supreme Court justices. 3.
Oh, God.
Like,
imagine if that's Trump. My God.
We're screwed, right?
God.
And so I think that's the piece for us, that if we're going to talk around a cohesive messaging, if we're going to talk around what does it look like to be able to survive, it is voting for Biden reluctantly, but voting for those next 3 Supreme Court justices potentially.
And his cabinet,
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's all of that. And then within these next 2 years, think around who should we be voting into spaces in terms of judges, who should be our commissioners, who should be all of these people that we should be thinking about. And then within the next 4 years, let's actually get these votes all together. And so I do think if we are able within the next 4 years, strategically, understanding that young people who are starting to vote want to vote as progressively as possible, and then also identifying a candidate who will ultimately at least have a foundation of what we believe in. If we can norm on those 10 things that we need the most as a Black community, I think that we can ultimately create a strategy where the candidate's not going to be perfect for everybody. However, I think a majority of Black people can align on one person who is genuinely interested in justice. I think Cornel West provides a platform that gives us a base of what are some things we can scale down to like a local level in order to achieve what we want to achieve. And then when the next 4 years, be strategic around like, I'm not gonna compromise my vote. Like, I think Black people need to be as audacious as possible and tell them we're not compromising our vote for the next round of presidential elections. So use these next 4 years as us to survive and try to be as equilibrium as possible, and then swing that shit right back into our favor as much as possible. But that requires us all to, and it requires more convincing. It requires political education. We need to build capacity for people, but we also need to create infrastructure that allows people to believe. And so I think, yeah, going back to the proof of concept shit, that's going to be what we're going to need, but we're going to have to do a lot of convincing, a lot of really good PR, a lot of really good marketing in terms of like what we truly need. And it's going to be a lot more difficult because we're so hyper individualistic in this moment in time. And so we're not considering community. We are considering self and our own personal frustrations that we have. And it's sad that that's where we're at now.
Well said. Well, that's politics.
Okay.
And in some other news, Nikki Haley's bum ass has come out and endorsed Trump after being on the campaign trail and talking about how unfit he is. What a coward. What? Oh, I just can't with her.
She wanted to be that vice president so bad.
So bad. Girl, bye.
Get out.
Bye. Trump just had a huge rally. It's still going on right now in the South Bronx.
Dog, I hate it here.
I hate it here.
Yep. Like what?
Oh, and has a ton of support, which is very interesting. I'm hoping that some of these people are paid actors. Who knows? His trial, I believe everybody rested. Yeah, they rested their cases, and now the jury, I think, has to deliberate. I don't know how well that thing went in terms of, I can't get into it because it's a longer conversation. Yeah. Michael Cohen is a very interesting player. I encourage folks to go do their research on that. Can't get into it, but at the end of the day, Michael Cohen has definitely lied about a lot of things. He's corrupt, he's this and that, and at the end of the day, that is who Trump hired. That was his right-hand man, so that says something about him still. And Amber Rose is embarrassing all of Philadelphia. Being a dumbass. I think that ink is seeping into her brain cells, child. And
it has to be.
She has come out and also endorsed Trump. She is not only endorsing him, but arguing people down online.
Yo.
The fact that people are pissed off, like, excuse me, you have a black son. What is wrong with you? And she's like laughing my ass off. Y'all think Biden cares about black people? Black is not capitalized. Sad. Do your research.
Of course
I did. I'll always, in capital letters, put women first. Y'all want biological men and women's. Right. Y'all want biological men in women's sports? I roll. I mean, wow, Amber. Trump supports the most reasonable compromise on abortion. Interesting. Stop being brainwashed because we're people of color. We're is capitalized. Make your own decisions. Amber and Kanye, Olay said it best. I was stealing her line from the episode I already recorded with her. It makes more sense every day while they were together. Every day. It just gets a little more clear. So
every single day.
Why them assholes linked up? So that's where we're at, kids. That's where we're at. I don't have no anger towards Cardi B saying she's not voting. I hope that she changes her mind. I don't love the fact that she's announcing that because it feels like, our platform is huge and it feels like she's encouraging other people to follow in line. But I I understand her frustration as to why she has gotten there. So ain't no judgment. Shout out to her.
Look,
Someone
okay.
I am judging. No, I shouldn't be like that. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to, Fran was on here. I got to channel my inner Fran. I got to be like, what would Fran do? How would Fran approach this? I truly don't know. I really
Who
don't.
are we judging?
Diddy.
Oh, Judging, denouncing. What else I gotta say?
This is a plug. Can't Afford Therapy is recording a season 3. And we just did an episode on accountability and what accountability is. And it got very interesting because I was saying, I'm embodying abolition more and more. And
it's hard.
And it's hard. And it's the hardest to embody it in your personal life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyway, I won't give away what the conversation was about. But this Diddy situation, I'm like, yo, he needs serious fucking help. And I know I know people are like, he needs fucking punishment. He needs to be under the jail. He needs this. He needs that. I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm really not. I ain't there
That's
yet.
okay.
But I do know he needs help. It takes a sick individual to do the things that he has done and then to hit us with this bum ass apology after the video comes out. I'm going to play the apology. I'm sure people have heard it.
It's so difficult to reflect on the darkest times in your life. Sometimes you got to do that. I was fucked up. I hit rock bottom, but I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video. Disgusted. I was disgusted then when I did it. I'm disgusted now. I went and I sought out professional help. I had to go into therapy, go into rehab. Had to ask God for his mercy and grace. I'm so sorry. I'm committed to be a better man each and every day. Not asking for forgiveness. Truly sorry.
All right. I counted maybe like 13, 14, 15 times in that video. I saw some people reporting that he's not legally allowed to say Cassie's name. That was a part of the settlement. I don't know how true that is. I do not know how true that is. Even with that said, if that is true, let's give him whatever benefit of the doubt we can with this apology in quotations.
Right.
I just feel that one, to hop online and do this, I was so shocked. I was so shocked. I know that his lawyers, his PR team was like, what on God's green earth? Why? Because
what are you doing?
It comes off as you are still living in this like reality show that was your life for so long. You are still so worried about your image, about your following, your masses. You didn't talk about how you're committed to being a better man. You didn't address that up until that video came out, you were lying, saying that she was lying, that you were posting wildly manipulative videos, Instagram posts, stories, creating this narrative that she was just out to get your money, she and the other women, and was using your kids to help your image in some way.
Garner sympathy.
It is, there's not enough gas in the world for that amount of gaslighting. I was just flabbergasted by it. I was so angry for her as well because, like, bro, what money are you donating to what domestic violence cause? What are you doing with your children? How have you apologized to them? What other women
Mm-hmm.
have you harmed? Like, what were the steps that you took? That's a part of accountability. You know,
Yep.
that's a part of restorative justice. It's like
Yep.
if we want to be abolitionists and we want to say, you know, do away with jail, and not everybody does, and I understand that. But let's
That's
say that
real.
we did. Let's say that we did. Mr. Restorative Justice is on the motherfucking podcast right now. That's the first
And I am.
episode you came and did with us. And you're the perfect person for this because, hello, nothing about this felt restorative. It felt like
No.
it felt like a shield. You talk because you're more of an expert in this than me, please.
But it's valid though, right? Like this to me, this is very one-sided. Like I told you the last episode, I actually don't think you need to be in community with the person who caused the harm to you. And part of restorative justice, if we look at it in the process, is actually it requires both parties or a community of folks to be able to speak on behalf of the person who was harmed, right? And in this moment, so many I won't even call them missteps, so many tactics of manipulation were had, right? From the get. If you were truly remorseful, you wouldn't have done that, try to tarnish her name in the beginning of all of this, right? If you were truly remorseful, you actually would have been apologized. You would have been went to therapy. You would have been did any of this kind of work, right? But the reality is you're only upset because you got caught. You didn't acknowledge any of this stuff. Like to me, you're apologizing because people saw it. You're not actually apologizing to the person that you actually caused this harm to. And to me, I'm just like, yeah, there is no, like right now in this moment, everybody should be able to judge this man. He actually does not need to be in community with a decent amount of people because at this point in time, I can't restore that because I don't even think he himself wants to be restored. The only thing he was worried about restoring was his actual image. So the idea of restorative justice actually requires you to want to change. You're not changing. Right now, you're experiencing a lot of shame. You're not experiencing guilt. You're experiencing shame, which means you're just trying to cover up as much as possible.
Stay
and so
face.
even as so I'm just like, no, I actually don't think in this moment of time there hasn't been any restoration that's actually happening. There hasn't been on his part any work that he has done to remedy the situation, right? And remedy the harm. Honestly, and for Cassie, it's probably like, just, I don't want nothing to do with you no more, right? And most times it's, I don't want you to be able to do this to anybody else. That's the piece. Like, will you replicate this harm? And so for me, when I listen to the quote unquote apology, I didn't see remorse. I didn't see him want to do anything. There's nothing in his face, in his tone. It felt like a very minimal PR. I'm gonna put a sad tone to my voice to make it seem like, yeah, you're gonna, it's a performative at best. And so for me, I was actually absolutely disgusted. I was repulsed by it, and I just continue to keep my thoughts with Cassie and anybody else who is particularly triggered in this moment, because that is the same thing that so many people are able to utilize the tactic of, well, I'm going to use some therapy language. I'm going to be able to talk around doing this work, but nothing in any of his sentences was specific in anything that he was doing. And so for right then and there, that tells me if you cannot name the harm that you caused, you are not doing the work. You're not naming the thing that you're actually remorseful for. And that's what I call bullshit and all of that. So for me, that apology was a non-apology. That was me saving face. That, for all intents and purposes, that could have been one of those iOS press releases that you could have sent out.
Could have been an AI child. What? Let me ask you though. Walk us through what a real apology, or real, what a real, more acceptable apology looks and sounds like from him.
Right. And to me, utilizing spectacle took everything away from it for me personally.
Talk about
Um,
that. What do you mean by that?
so the idea of spectacle is now I am going to use the emotionally charged language. I am going to utilize social media as
Mm.
a way to restore and garner as much sympathy as possible. Because the thing is, he is utilizing the fact that niggas love a redemption story.
Hmm.
Oh, at least I can get this work done. Oh, at least I can at least be redeemed. Because now the defense will end up being, and we see it happen with some people who are just like, well, God's going to help him or this is going to help or whatever, right?
Going right
But in
there.
reality, for me, I'm just like, no, he's utilizing this language because there are so many other people who allowed this behavior to be permissible, who are also just as bad, but as long as they can feel like they can restore him, they feel like they can also be restored themselves for how they either participated or were complicit in the same thing. And so that's why I think what he did was a spectacle, because he will garner sympathy from other niggas who also did this shit. He will garner sympathy for those who are apologizing and want to say like this person can be restored in this moment, but that's only because they need to cover up whatever either shame that they have, any harm that they have caused, or anything that they've been associated with, because he's still proximity to power. He's still proximity to access. And I think utilizing that kind of public spectacle is just another manipulation tactic. And so that's why I say the spectacle does not add to what a genuine apology looks like on somebody of his scale.
Mm.
Now,
Keep going. No, keep going. I want you to keep going.
I was going to say, if we do think around like a genuine apology, right? You have to say, I am sorry for name the thing, right? And then you can, if you choose to name the person's name, as much as specific as you can get. And then you need to talk around like, what am I going to commit to in order to do better, right? It may not be the donation part, but it's
not
like,
just
how
being a
am I
better
gonna,
man every day, whatever that fuck that means.
right? Because that's the spectacle language, right? Like that's the thing of like, I'm gonna be a better man. People can attach to that because so many of us want to claim to be better men. But what is the process of becoming a better man? Being a better man means you hold accountability. Being a better man means you have to name the harm that you did. Being a better man means that you need to understand exactly what the person you harmed wants in this moment and commit to not doing that thing again, right? He doesn't know what Cassie wants in that moment, because if he knew what Cassie wanted in that moment, most people who are on the receiving end and are harmed probably don't want you to bring that shit up in a very public spectacle, because guess what happens on the back end to that person? Because now they have to relive it. Now, if you don't know what the other person on the other side actually wants, you're not gonna be able to restore any of that.
How does he
And sometimes you don't.
apologize though? Because if it's not public, I mean, he's fucking Diddy, right?
Right.
If it's not public, then he's gonna have to say something eventually,
Right.
right?
At some point, right? But that has to be on the assumption, and I think that's the space. Like for me personally, I'm not assuming the best of him and like the space that he genuinely wants to grow. None of that demonstrated that he has shame. None of it has demonstrated that he feels guilty of the things that he has done. And so I am not convinced, from a personal standpoint, I'm not convinced that he actually wants to change. I think his motives are completely wrong. And so I think it is for me, I don't know the full answer of like how Diddy is going to actually apologize in this moment. But I would be interested, and she doesn't have to do any of this, right? But what would Cassie want in this moment? Right. And I think I always want to try to make sure that we are putting the victims and the harmed
She
in
said
space to like.
She released a statement today. She said, "What I want is for people to believe women the first time."
There we go.
And so what he needed to do was address all of the ways in which he lied and tried to paint her to be this horrible person who was just trying to steal his money. That's what he needed to address that. She
I
said
didn't even realize she released it. Yeah.
She released a statement today. The poor woman. Poor woman, strong woman.
Right.
Toy Marie Smith, who I love this woman. Follow her, y'all. Toy Marie, TOIMARIE. Oh, I wanted to shout out something she was doing. I'm gonna pull that up before we go. She wrote things I need to say. And I posted this on Instagram. She said, "It makes sense when men who are abusers of women seek redemption. They turn to God, whom they believe forgives them no matter what. A big reason they turn to God and feel comfortable saying things like, 'Only God can judge me,' is because they worship a male God who, of course, is deeply understanding of their plight as men. This
Yeah.
God has an allegiance to them, more so than women, because God is a man like them." Woo, toy. She getting the people going. People was pissed off when I posted that, and I don't give a fuck. And then that makes me think about Kelly Price, right? Kelly Price got dragged, which
did.
I thought was interesting. Maybe it wasn't the time, maybe it wasn't the place. I'm not going to speak on this, but she was basically saying, I pray that God, she said it, the Holy Ghost needs to overtake you so that you not only change your heart, but hey, I have a change in the mind and a change in direction. I have seen you at your best, which is where people were pissed, and at your worst. They're like, we don't give a fuck about his best right now. But is that restorative justice? We don't know. Larger conversation for another time. Kelly Price went in. I also want to leave with I Am Donovan, who I thought, again, brilliant.
Donovan, my guy.
Do you know this human? Who is this human? I don't
Donovan?
know. Yeah, I don't know. Please.
Oh my God.
Send me his stuff. Because this was
absolutely.
I said, whoa.
Yes.
Diddy's music raised many of us and impacted culture in major ways, helping lead the propagation of colorism, misogyny, homophobia, hypercapitalism. People have been sounding the alarm on Sean, among others, and collectively, we've never drawn a line in the sand. I'm wondering if we're now willing to admit that we prop up monsters in our society and follow their leads. We aid and abet abusers. We line their pockets with cash, ignore shit, and dream of the soft life. The unpacking is heavy, but we gotta. Finally, I bring you to higher learning. Van got his ass dragged a little bit. It wasn't too bad of a drag, but he got dragged to the point where he was defending himself against something that I felt was unfair on Twitter. I'm not going to relitigate that.
That's real.
But also, they put out an emergency podcast on this. The news broke. They hurried up, recorded. Did not go well for him, especially with what was happening on Twitter. They come back this week, and I thought to myself, this is an apology. 30 minutes off. Did you listen to this at all?
I didn't. No.
You got to check it out because you are somebody, I'm so curious to know your thoughts, and I want the listeners to check it out. This is what an apology is. For 30 minutes, not only was there, I'm sorry, it was, this is what I reflected on. This is what I came up with. This is what I recognize needs to shift. This is where I have fallen short. This is what I'm committed to do better next time. I apologize to the listeners. I apologize. I'm human. I'm gonna make mistakes. No, I apologize. I will be better. I apologize, Rachel. I will be better. I am thankful for all the people who called on me to call me in, to call me out, to help work through this with me. That's not your work. I understand that, but I've landed here and I recognize that as much as I think I am in the corner of women and in support of women, he summed it up with, he was like, I do not yet value women the same way that I value men, because there's no way that that my mind would have went to, oh my God, Diddy was an icon. He was a hero before what the
fuck happened?
These poor women. And then he even equated it to, I'm online and I'm seeing this celebrity who has accusations, has served time. I'm online, I've seen this celebrity. I mean, it was such a great demonstration for me to
Yeah.
learn about what an apology looks like, what
Yeah.
accountability looks like. And
Yeah.
to call me in to be like, yo, are you the same way? Like, you might be a woman, you might have the parts, but to the listeners, how many of us ignored his allegations? This is not just fuck Diddy time. This is time for us to sit and think like, whoa, do I value women the same way I value men? And why? And if not, why? Go ahead.
Because we're all victims of patriarchy, and then we
I
ultimately
feel like I
become
say the
agents
same
of,
shit every week. They're gonna get sick of me. Numbers
and
gonna
they'll be
go
all
down.
right.
We gonna lighten it up after
Fine.
this, y'all.
Okay. No, but in reality, so one, thank you for like naming all of those steps, because those are some of the steps of like restorative conferences. You need to have a recognition of the harm that was caused. You need to then move into like, let's name the thing. What do I need to change? What am I willing to commit to? Divorce of the person who was harmed, right? Like, this is the thing that I am personally committed to changing.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here, and as you're like talking, I'm just like, oh, I am like, there are so many things at play as you preface this with what Donovan was talking about, right? And as you talked around with Toy Smith had said, right? And so as I'm thinking around like, one, all of these collective things that are happening, it is the fact that Diddy was an aspirational person for so many people.
Right.
Diddy was like, here is what I can aspire to be, and here is a black man, quote unquote, who made it.
Right.
Right.
And we
because
have to protect him because that we don't have enough of them.
We don't have enough of them. And it's something that we do every single time. We prop people up into the space where we no longer see them as human, and we no longer see them in spaces that they can fuck up. Right. And so we're just like, but do we got to bring this up? But do we got to talk about this? Why do we always have to bring this up? Right. Like I said earlier, niggas love a redemption story. But in reality, in this moment, we are looking at like, yeah, let's actually talk around all the harm. Because fact of the matter is, and this is why, all right, I'm gonna get on the soapbox real quick.
Get on it.
But this is why I get so irritated with this idea that like black men are not being protected. Black men are not being protected. I said, no, we protect the worst of the niggas, like every single time. But because we see them as aspirational, I'm just like, no, there are niggas that you will not give a second thought to. There are people we're in community with that we make excuses for because we see potential for men to change. I said, I don't understand how Bell Hooks gets dragged by niggas as much as she does, by other people as much as she does, because she quite literally has an entire philosophy around the potential for us to change. But the reality is, we don't change until the harm is caused, until we are publicly shamed, and then we feel the need to change.
To protect the image.
To protect the image, because we still default to the black man as the anchor of the black community, despite the fact that black women are holding it down the entire time, right? But we will find any reason to just say, here is this one person who has made it. Here's these very few who have made it. And then this is who we are going to protect at all costs, because he is the most visible. He is the most successful. He is the most aspirational. He is the person who can lift up everybody else. That does not mean that you get to do whatever you want. This is why this behavior was as permissible as it was for so long, because we were just like, but he's like, y'all, Cosby did so much good for the community. Y'all, Diddy did this. He represents this. What does he actually represent? He represents money. He represents business. Bad
individualism.
Business. Individualism. He represents all the things
exploitation.
That we have. Quite literally, everything that we aspire to is nothing but white supremacy, patriarchal capitalism. He's just that in blackface.
Oh my God.
And so like,
yes.
So that's what it is. And so I'm just like, y'all, he is the space that people aspire to so they can get away with doing what he can do. It's the same thing that we equated with Harvey Weinstein. How come you're going to do this if you're not looking at this? Everybody's causing harm. Everybody's doing bad shit. So why does anybody want to aspire to anything or get away with the shit that other people are getting away with? No, you should be looking at the people who are trying to do good. And so this whole narrative around like, oh, we need to protect black men and we need to do this thing. Yes, and we need to be able to recognize that black men are vulnerable And we need to be able to call some bullshit out at the same time and not think that because there's one of the many of us, prop somebody else up. But y'all like the fact that he embodies these patriarchal values. You like that he is the quote unquote ideal masculine, right? Because that's what we aspire is power. We aspire that's protection. We aspire that we can at some point get this thing. But if we take down Diddy, then this means that my ass, who don't have a quarter, a 1% of what Diddy has, I'm not even worthy of redemption at that point in time. And so I do think it is like the insecurity of the black man, which is why we try to see as much humanity in somebody else. Because if we can't redeem this person, what makes me redeemable at all? And that's only because that nigga has all those eyes on him. And so when I look at all this shit, I'm frustrated, I'm annoyed. There's so much shit that just needs to be dismantled. But like so many of us are so willing to protect black men who continuously do harm. But let you, Antoinette, one time cut Shanti off. You are the bane of everybody's existence. Let Beyonce step on somebody's toe. Let Kelly Rowland cut somebody out.
Ciao.
Oh, well, now she's difficult to work with. Oh, now it's the. And so I'm like, that double standard on how we expect black women or black femmes to be the moral compass of everything, but we're not having the same expectation of black men to do the same. We're not having the expectation of black people as a whole to just do the same because we're still protecting an aspiration, somebody who is one of so many of us. That to me is what is so mind-boggling. We can do the stuff where we can pontificate around like what could he have done better and all this stuff, but at the core of it, the protection of Diddy is a protection of self for black men who has caused harm but don't know how to feel redeemed in that moment. And that's the shit that we really need to be able to unpack, is like, what does it look like to know that, not even going to the grotesque extreme of Diddy, when I personally do a minor fuck up, am I worthy of redemption? Am I worthy of being vulnerable in that moment? Am I able to have the capacity to change when presented with new information and new experiences? I think that's the piece that we just don't see enough of on a smaller scale, because at the end of the day, we're still protecting those around us. We're still protecting even our neighbors that we know are causing harm. We still are just like, well, that's not in my house. That's not happening over here. And because of us saying that's not my home, we have embodied that in the public imagination, and we have adopted it as, well, this is what black women are just going to have to go through. Every one of us go through it in our generation. Because you look at it and you're like, 1 in 3 black women are going to experience some type of domestic violence at some point in time. And that was so normed, almost like a rite of passage for so many black women who talk around, and they talk around it being a generational curse. We adopt it as a strong black woman. We adopt it as this. No, how about we talk about that ain't shit nigga? How about we talk about that? Right? And so, okay, that took me to a space because it really just bothered me. But like witnessing it in my personal life and witnessing my mom have to go through stuff like that, that's the kind of stuff where I'm just like, we need to look at those who experience abuse. And those are things like I had to work out. Like, I was like, Mom, I have no idea how you dealt with so many of them, but you were in a position where you had to compromise to ensure that we can be taken care of above all else, which is why some people stayed around, because humanizing my mom in those moments, humanizing women I know experienced abuse, is just like, I did it to protect y'all. I did it to do this. I did it because I needed to, right? If I could take this more than somebody else, then cool, right? And so I'm just like, sometimes we wear that harm as a badge of honor, which is what I've experienced family members do. But I'm like, that should not be the standard. That should not be the generational curse that so many black families, and particularly black matriarchs, deal with in so many different capacities, because we expect them to, no matter what the amount of harm I can do to you, you should always want me back. You should always be able to redeem this person, because if not you, then that gives permission to white people, non-black people, to also throw away. But at what point, like Donovan said, do we draw that line and say, you are no longer good for us? You need to find that somewhere else. That's the reality. That's the difficult part of having an abolitionist politic. That's the human part of people who experience this stuff. And that's the larger conversation that niggas just need to have, of like, how do we start unlearning patriarchy? How do we start divesting from it? How do we start genuinely putting a loving politic at the forefront of everything that we do, because if not, what progress are we actually making? It's still 1 in 3, if not 1 in 2 at this point, right? That's so scary to me. And I don't know how we get to that point as in humanity. I don't know how we get to that point with our neighbors, with each other. So it's so
No,
much.
listen, I so appreciate you. You have no idea. You have no idea how much I
Rare.
appreciate you, because my limited vocabulary won't even allow me to express it correctly. I don't want to go further on this episode. I want to put a button on that. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to hit stop on this recording. This will be the end of episode 354. And then I would love to talk about this Apple Music top 100 list with you. Maybe even this that viral teacher video, since you have a background in education and you had
I do it. I know.
very interesting thoughts on it.
Yeah.
And that could just be, listen, that could be a Patreon exclusive at this point. I love it.
I'm here for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we go, I want you to tell the people where they can follow you. Take your time. I want people to know exactly who you are, because I want your voice amplified. If you like this, then y'all better go over and y'all better support this man now. You better support this man. Go ahead.
We here. Oh man. Once again, thank you. I am so appreciative of your platform, of you. You're just wonderful. My name is Marquise Devon Richards, Marquise Davon across all social media. That is MarquiseDavon. You can find me on hosting Keeping It a Bean Pod. Over there, I talk around culture, commentary, all over a cup of coffee. If I'm recording at night, it's over some tea, because I ain't drinking no coffee after like 7 o'clock. That's a little wild in my book. We also found out that Bel Air is coming back August 15th.
Oh,
so
wow.
me and my boy Skip from BK, we host Heavy is the Crown, which is a Bel Air recap podcast as well. So make sure to be on the lookout for some new episodes to be dropping very soon. I'm also going to be hosting a couple R&B music nights here in Philadelphia as well, which I'm so excited to get into that bag as well. But again, if you follow my platform, a lot of it is trying to complicate the ideas of Black masculinity, trying to normalize more Black folks around coffee culture, but also just like humanizing and doing some more storytelling where I get to talk to Black people, primarily Black men, around life, shame, finding friendships in adulthood, pivoting in life, all of that stuff. So those are the conversations I'm having. You get to see how me and my peers interact, but I do believe storytelling is the most important part to form empathy, and I try to use my platform to spread joy, complicate narratives, but also expand what Black masculinity can look like. So that's me.
Listen, you got the words, bruh. All right. Shout out to you. Thank you for this episode. Wonderful episode.
Thank you.
Everybody, I guess I'll not see y'all, but we'll be back on Thursday with Miss Olay O'Loren.
Oh,
all right.
yes.
And with that, we are out.